All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and all our fans from across Africa. You're welcome to our monthly program on Frida's Initiative for Academic Excellence, where we look out for our continent, Africa. We talk about a topic that affects the continent by bringing on board an expert who assists us to dissect the challenge and then propose some recommendations. Today, we're going to look at what is happening in Sudan. Sudan is one of the countries in Africa, and as we speak, there is a conflict in Sudan, which is an ongoing civil war that has created what is described as the world's largest humanitarian crisis, wherein nearly 12 million people have been displaced and more than 24 million people are facing extreme food insecurity. This is not something encouraging for a continent blessed with human and natural resources. And we are blessed today to have one of our top leading experts. That is Mr. Justin Atamaluk. Mr. Justin is a lawyer by profession. He got his legal practice from South Sudan Bar Association. He achieved his LLB, that is Bachelor's of Law, from the University of Juba, his Master's of Law from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, and currently Mr. Justin is LLD candidate at the same University of Pretoria. Similarly, Mr. Justin is a law lecturer and head of Department International and Comparative Law at the University of Juba. Mr. Justin, good afternoon from West Africa.
Good afternoon, Abdallah, and thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now we need to directly go into we go to the program by trying to understand what is actually happening in Sudan. I know you're from South Sudan. I know Sudan colonized you for some years, and I know your country is the only Africa that has gotten independence from another African country. So let's kickstart this debate. Today we want to talk about conflict in Africa, but a case study of Sudan. So we are going to be specific about the situation in Sudan. So, Mr. Justin, let me start by asking you what major historical and colonial factors that have contributed to Sudan's recurring conflict?
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for that question. I think that question is familiar with all Sudanese, whether being in Sudan or in South Sudan. It is a question that has been answered, it has been asked, and has been answered by various Sudanese leaders and Sudanese movements, whether in Sudan or in South Sudan. And I think there are a lot of scholars that have argued that the Sudanese problem tied to the historical and colonial factors is the first factor is the fact that the way the power was transitioned immediately after independence from the British has something to do with the with the conflicts that have taken place immediately after, even before independence. Because before independence, you could see South Sudanese fighting the Sudanese government, and immediately after independence, that fight did not stop. The conflict did not stop. It goes on and continue to go on, and even after South Sudan succeeded from Sudan, the conflict did not stop. And like I said, it has something to do with the way the power was transitioned from the British to the Sudanese, and the people that were given the power were the people from the north, predominantly the Arab Africans, if you could put it that way. They are the minority, and they were given the power, and they used that power to marginalize the Black Africans in Sudan. and it is the reason why South Sudan or South Sudanese fought the different regimes of the Sudanese government, because the South Sudanese felt that the people that were holding the power were predominantly Arabs, and they were the minority, and that they were marginalizing the majority, who are the Black Africans. So it has to go back. It has something to do with the way the power was transitioned from the British uh, to to the Arab Muslims in the Sudan, in the north of Sudan.
Thank you so much for giving that historical analysis and perspective to the topic. From that historical analysis, how did the North-South divide and the 2011 separation of South Sudan shape Sudan's political and security landscape?
Thank you again for that question. Like I said, the fight, the conflict for against marginalization started even before independence, before the first independence of Sudan from the British. Because I think around 1955, South Sudanese mobilized themselves and they fought against the government of Sudan, because they felt that they were being marginalized, and even after the independence of Sudan, they continued to fight until 2011. What led to the 2011 independence was the 2005 comprehensive peace agreement, which was signed between the government of Southern Sudan at the time, and the Sudanese government. And in that, there was a specific clause in that agreement, which indicated that after a certain period of time, if unity was not attractive, then the South Sudanese could vote for independence, and that's what they did in 2010, and in 2011 the South Sudan had its independence. So I think the Black Africans that remained in Sudan thought that if South Sudanese could do it, if they could fight for the if they could fight for the freedom for self-determination, we who are the majority remaining in Sudan could also fight for self-determination. We could also manage to fight against marginalization, and I think that is what is now happening in Sudan. I think the independence, the independence of South Sudan from Sudan has encouraged the majority, the Black community that has remained in Sudan to fight, because they see that there could be hope, that there's a hope, and that there could be freedom at the end of the day. Whether by having their own state, or just generally trying to transform the political landscape in Sudan by ensuring that they are in the government and that they participate in the government, and that there's no a group that is marginalizing another group. Instead, there's parity, and I think uh, the South Sudan independence has led to what is going on, has contributed clearly to what is going on today in Sudan, and it has shaped the political landscape and the security arrangements in Sudan and so on. Yeah. Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you for that response. Now, in your professional opinion, let's talk about professional opinion now. What do you think triggered the current crisis that we're having in Sudan, and who are actually the main parties in this conflict?
Just to give you a short anecdote, the two commanders were close friends to the former president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir. The commander, Burhan, was is an individual that joined the army, went to the Sudan Military College, rose through the ranks and was appointed as a chief of staff in 2018. Ameti, on the other hand, the commander, the head of the paramilitary group, was a businessman, and but he was a businessman that was well informed about belligerent activities and so on. And because of that, he was appointed by President Bashir as the head of the paramilitary rapid support forces in 2013. So the two generals were close friends to Bashir until 2019, when they decided to overthrow the government of Bashir, and the two formed a council. The sovereign council, the transitional sovereign council, where Burhan was the head. In other words, he was the de facto head of state, and Ameti was the deputy, and then they brought in Hamdok as a prime minister to be the head of the cabinet. But at some point, there were protests. Civilians were demanding for civilian rule again, because initially they were not happy with Bashir government, because Bashir has stayed in power for close to 3 decades, and because of that they were not happy. They wanted a democratic regime, and because of that, these two generals, they knew that if they were the one to rule the country without a semblance of you know uh, of an individual that represents a civilian rule, then it could prove to be a problem. And because of that, they brought in Hamdok to be the prime minister. But after sometimes there were again recurring protests from the civilians, that because they wanted a civilian, absolute civilian rule. They wanted the country to be returned to a civilian rule. And because of that, Amdok, who's an economist and a former employee of the United Nations, decided to resign and left the two generals, to be the one heading the country. Because of that, the two generals, clutch over control, over who should effectively control the country. But there were other factors as well, because Burhan demanded that the forces, the paramilitary forces, be integrated into the national army, and because of that, conflict broke out in Sudan. Fighting started immediately after disagreements, related to integration and who should, rule the country and so on. So those are the things that led to the 2023 conflict in in Sudan. But again, you see one individual taking advantage of the existing problems. Like, for example, a Métis, someone that comes from a black community, largely from this side of Darfur and so on. And these are people that were already thinking that they are being marginalized, and so on. The paramilitary, group has origin, from Janjaweed and so on. So those are the things that led to the 2023 conflict in Sudan. And
All right. Thank you so much for that comprehensive response. From your response, we get to know that the leader of the leader of Sudanese Armed Forces, that is SAF, which is General Brian, and the leader of Rapid Support Forces RSF, that is General Amdan. They were allies of the then
yes,
President Bashir.
yes,
Eventually, they worked together as a team to unseat him. They
yes,
formed the unity government, and now we're having crisis. Is there actually a difference between these two, the Sudanese armed forces and then the rapid support forces? Are they the same, or because they're operating within the same country called Sudan? You
yes,
understand? And one
yes,
is this, one is that. Are they the same? Are they different? So that we understand our members will, properly follow what is their interest, what is actually happening. If they were part of Bashir regime, they decide to push the guy out and then form a unity, like a unity government. Are they not supposed to? What is the difference between these two forces?
The one that the forces that are led by Burhan were the Sudanese forces, the government forces, but the forces, the paramilitary forces, they are former, former. I don't know how you could refer to them. They were like mercenaries, these were people that were fighting for money. You could say that because uh, one could say that because you see them fighting in the Middle East, being transported to Middle East to fight there, some part of Libya and so on. So they were not part of the Sudanese armed forces. They are the paramilitary group. They were not part of the government, but because at some point Bashir felt that there was a need to have them on board and be part of him, in a sense that you could tell that from the appointment which was made in 2013 by former President Bashir, where he appointed Ameti, as the head, officially as the head of the paramilitary group. But these were people initially that were not part of the Sudanese armed forces, and it's the reason why you could tell from the action, from the intentions of Burhan, where he intended to integrate the paramilitary group into the armed forces. It clearly shows that the group, the paramilitary group were not part of the national army, and Burhan felt that there was a need to integrate them into the army. So if you look at those actions, measures, one could easily tell that clearly they have never been part of the national army, and they are not part of the national army.
Okay, now that we have understood the background, because the background is really, really important to assist our followers and audience to get the proper gist of what is happening in Sudan, the parties, their different interests, the causes of this. Now, the next question I'll ask you is, how has the ongoing conflict affect the civilian population, especially because that's our interest? How has this conflict affect the civilian population in Sudan?
It has, there are devastating effects, or impacts made as a result of the conflict. I was looking at the reports, and I saw that around 150,000 people have died, as a result of the conflict, and around 1.3 or 5 million people are displaced, as a result of the conflict. Starvation all over. This, these are things, on paper, they don't really look good, and in reality, clearly, the situation is not good in Sudan. So these are the impacts that are being felt. Loss of life, health of children has been impacted, and people are leaving the country, being displaced, and it's not easy being displaced from your country. These are conditions, these are ongoing conditions that need to be abated, and there should be a sustainable solution to these situations.
Thank you for painting that. I don't know the word I'm going to use. I don't want to use horrific, but that is the situation. Picture for us of what is happening in Sudan, especially to the civilian population. The next question will be, what are the regional implications? The regional implications of Sudanese instability to the neighboring community, because Sudan is bordered by different countries, and whatever is happening in Sudan should have a spillover, to some of their neighboring countries. So, what are the regional implications of Sudan's instability to their neighboring countries?
Yeah, I think security wise, I have not, because I just want to be very accurate with the things that I'm saying. It is very important. I've not seen a situation where uh, there have been conflicts as a result of conflict happening in Sudan, but there have been economic impacts. For example, South Sudan oil, uh, passes through Sudan up to the Port Sudan, the pipeline, and at some point, uh, oil production has been stopped, and that had economic implications for for the Sudanese, for the South Sudanese people. I've noted economic problems faced by neighboring countries such as South Sudan as a result of the conflict. The other problem that has been faced by the neighboring countries is the problem of the refugees. You see, South Sudanese refugees have come to South Sudan. They have gone to Egypt and other neighboring countries, and that has given burden to these countries that are hosting them, given the fact that some of these countries have a very weak economy, and these are countries, some of them cannot effectively support their citizens, leave alone having other people coming from other country. So there have been economic, consequences felt by these neighboring countries, that the countries that are neighboring Sudan. That's what I can say.
Okay, yes, economic impact is even worse at times because people need to survive. And
Yeah.
a country that has its major economic source, for example, South Sudan, with its pipeline passing through, I was telling a friend, it was uh, a serious political calculation, you understand, by the then president, Bashir, to have the crude in South Sudan, and they have the refinery in Sudan.
In Sudan.
And then
Yeah.
you need to lay pipe and move the crude from the South Sudanese people. You move it to Sudan, you refine it there, you make money from there, and then you do whatever you want to. So that was a serious political calculation because even with the independence, you understand, if
Mm,
South Sudan cannot come up, with its own refinery, you will
yeah.
still need to patronize the
Yeah.
Sudanese government. You understand? And
Yes.
so economically, it is still, colonized in terms of the crude because the crude
Yeah.
itself, it's useless until it is
Mm,
refined. And when you refine
definitely.
it, you have very many products coming out of the crude. You
Yes.
have you have petrol or gasoline, you have diesel, you have kerosene, you have jet fuel, you have petrochemicals that you can use, to produce detergents, medicine, all so many things that can come from one crude. But if you do not have that
Yeah.
refinery in your own country, and building a refinery costs a lot of money. And so
Yeah.
technically, you can have your freedom, independence, but you still have one or two things to do in Sudan.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. You're correct.
Okay, so that was just a bit of digression. The next question I would like to ask is, in all of this,
Mm,
what will be in your own thinking, what has been the involvement of the international community in
mm,
this ongoing, because now you are an expert in international and comparative law, and
mm,
Sudan is a member of the international community, and
mm.
there should be some level of involvement, intervention. What do you think at this stage, or since the beginning of the civil war, the involvement of the international community?
Yeah, thank you. I think 2 years ago, I was writing an article on the Sudanese conflict, which was that research was published by the Global Campus of Human Rights in Italy, and I was looking at the the severity of the Sudanese conflict and the measures that have been taken by the international community, and I came across, the fact that the International Criminal Court has commenced, investigations, uh, uh, for whatever is going on in Darfur, because I remember that in 2005, the UN made a referral, the Security Council made a referral, that led to the issuance of the warrant of arrest against Bashir, against President Bashir for his actions in Darfur. Based on that, that referral, based on that resolution, the International Criminal Court, a prosecutor from the International Criminal Court has commenced investigations, and those investigations I think are ongoing, and if they find that war crimes have been committed, war crimes against humanity have been committed, and then the two generals, will be held responsible for the actions. And unfortunately, the resolution only limits itself to Darfur. So that means only crimes that have serious crimes that have been committed in Darfur only are the crimes that will be investigated by the prosecutor, and those are the crimes in which the prosecutor can take action against the two generals. And therefore, there's a need for the Security Council to, make another referral that encompasses the entire country, to ensure that crimes that have been committed in different locations apart from Al Janina, Darfur, for that matter, are covered. They are also captured, and if that could be done, then that would be better. But in the meantime, it is important that the prosecutor continues with the investigations ongoing in Darfur, in Al Janina in particular, and that there should be a response. There should be an efficient and effective response in that regard. I've also seen that there have been sanctions made by countries such as USA, and other countries. I'm not sure which other countries, but I've seen that USA has made sanctions against the two generals, and so far those are the actions I'm aware that have been taken by the international community. Again, there's a need to be done. Unfortunately, it seems that people are turning, a blind eye to the situation happening in Sudan and other African states, and attention is being given to countries, other countries, not outside Africa, and therefore that's a challenge. I think it is the reason why we have a limited response from the international community in relation to the Sudanese conflict and other conflicts in Africa.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, as the head of department, international and comparative law, let's do a bit of comparison. How does Sudan's conflict compare to, other contemporary conflicts in Africa? How does South Sudan, their conflict compare to, maybe other countries in Africa?
Yes, thank you so much. I feel that, and I think that there are a lot of commonalities, between the Sudanese conflict and other conflicts in Africa, in the sense that civilians suffer the most, in these conflicts, and there are a lot of humanitarian crises that happen, when there are conflicts such as this conflict in Sudan and other conflicts in Africa. But in as much as there are commonalities, there are also differences. The players involved in this matter, the players that are involved in the Sudanese conflict are definitely not not the players involved in the conflicts happening in other African states. So I think that's the plain answer that can be given. There are commonalities in relation to the impacts of the conflict, but there are differences in relation to the players, to the actors involved. Those the actors that are supporting the Sudanese conflict and those involved on the ground.
All right, thank
And
you
yeah,
for that comparison, especially from the point of casualties. In
mm.
every civil war, civilians will be affected, people will be displaced. Now, against that background, can you paint for us a picture of the current humanitarian situation in Sudan in terms of displacement, food, and the rest?
Yes, like like I said, I think I would just refer you to an article that I wrote, I think 2 years ago, where the title of the article was "Bullet or Hunger." so so it is a choice between bullet or hunger. If you remain and stay in Khartoum, which is the city that is mostly affected by the conflict, that the chances are that you'll die of bullet, you'll die from a bullet. And if you decide to leave the country, chances are that uh, you will die along the way because of food. It is a choice between staying and dying of bullet, or even of hunger if you decide to stay in a house and not move out. So it is a terrible choice to make. you know you come out, of the house and you risk being shot, because if you don't move, chances are that you'll die of hunger in the house. But if you move out, chances are that there will be a crossfire from the forces from either side, either from the RSF or from the SAF. So it is devastating to have, to be in such a situation, where you have to choose. Clearly, you are dying. It is a question of what are you dying of? Are you dying of from hunger, or you are dying from bullets? And a lot of people clearly who had the chance to flee, have gone to other countries, and they also face, conditions as well. There are also consequences for those that have fled. And clearly, a number of Sudanese people has left the country, and people have died. Like I said earlier, around 100. I saw a report made by BBC where it is clearly indicated that around 150,000 people have died, and rapes have been reported as well. Children are being raped, and rape is being used as a weapon as well. And clearly there are a lot of humanitarian problems, ongoing in Sudan generally.
I was asking for a picture to be painted, but now you've painted a gory picture that is very emotional because if civilians who do not even know what is happening, they are not parties, they just want to go about their own, you know, things and just survive. Now you put them at a crossroad where they need to choose whether to remain behind and starve to death or to risk moving out and then hit by strange bullets. And those are the two options. There's no third one. That
Yeah.
is a bigger problem. And then with that statistics of 150,000, before the mainstream media will report 150 on ground, it will be more than that. and these are civilians. It can be all of them can be, military forces who are trained to fight. These are civilians who are going by their own day-to-day activities, and they are caught up in this web of different interests, political interests, and people felt that the best way to resolve their disagreement is by going to war and killing each other. Now, I also understand that some humanitarian organizations have decided to assist in terms of aid. Are there any identified challenges faced by some of these international or even national organization, humanitarian organization that have decided to support to provide aid within Sudan?
Yeah, yes. Like I said, as a matter of being accurate, I have seen a report where in that report it is indicated that the RSF at some point, for a period of 18 months, you know, have seized, lay blocks, blockades around the city of Khartoum to ensure that no one enters and no one comes out. Some sort of restriction, and that restriction also includes, humanitarian. Is extended to humanitarian organizations, and there's no way organizations or humanitarian organizations could, take food and medicines, for example, to the people that are affected, you know, and that is a concern, that's one of the challenges being faced by humanitarian organizations in Sudan, lack of access to those that are affected, and that is a violation itself, yes. And in that article, I also indicated that Sudan is a state party to the Geneva Conventions, and has obligations. Unfortunately, they are not complying with these obligations. Obligations to also these obligations also include the obligation to ensure that humanitarian organizations have access to those that are affected and elevate or ameliorate the situation. So these are things that are ongoing, and they're ongoing against against the obligations to which Sudan is a state party to, because these obligations are entrenched in the Geneva Conventions, and these conventions have been ratified by the government of Sudan, and they apply to everyone, whether non-state actors or state actors.
Okay, thank you so much for that feedback. Now, from your previous responses, you've let us know that there were actually plans to achieve sustainable peace
Mhm.
between the rival parties. So, what are actually the obstacles in achieving this sustainable peace? Or what are the problems?
Yeah, like achieving a sustainable peace in Sudan is quite difficult. It is quite difficult in the sense that uh, the two parties are being backed by countries largely based located, I mean, in Middle East, and it is quite difficult because the decision will not be made by the commander on the ground, and this commander also has to listen to those that are backing him, and that is quite difficult in my opinion. The fact that Burhan is being supported by countries from Middle East, powerful countries, and Amati here being supported also by countries. Naturally, there have been accusations. A case was even taken to International Court of Justice by the government of Sudan against the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and although that case was dismissed, clearly shows that the Sudanese government considers that it is not only Ameti that is fighting them, but the Ameti has supporters, and these are powerful supporters. The same goes as well for them, for Burhan as well, and he has people that are supporting him. There have also been allegations made against him that he's also receiving backing from other countries. So the players involved, is will make achieving a sustainable peace in Sudan quite difficult. In addition, uh, there's no attention, like I said earlier on, from the international community. There's less attention for the Sudanese conflict. But I'm happy to see that a few days ago, President Trump was saying that he is going to intervene and ensure that there's a sustainable peace in Sudan. So we wait and see what will happen, what steps will be taken by the U.S. president, and how is he going to manage to bring these commanders together, and how that peace is going to look like. Is he going to also go to the roots and see who are those countries that are supporting this conflict, along different lines, and 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 ensure that he talks to them, and whether that will lead to a sustainable peace in Sudan remains to be seen clearly.
Okay, as we await the arrival of President Trump, in Africa, we also have our own big brother. Our big brother is the African Union,
Yes.
another regional organization that Sudan is a member. So, what do you think
Mm,
should be the role of the African Union in all of this, or as African Union play any role, you know,
mm,
in ensuring that we have peace in Sudan, whether African Union or any other regional organization?
mm. Yeah, thank you. I think it is not just a role; it is an obligation. The African Union has an obligation, and a few some time back, as I said, I wrote an article where I looked at the role that the African Union could play in Sudan, and I said, look, if you look at Article 4, Clause H and J. JH says that if there are situations of circumstances that are serious, like a situation where war crime is happening, crimes against humanity, are happening in that country, there should be an intervention, a humanitarian intervention, you know, and I argue that if why don't we read Article 4, Clause H, together with Article 6 of the peace and security, protocol, the and then there should be an intervention in Sudan, since the serious humanitarian crisis happening in Sudan. There should be an intervention. That intervention should be made by that call should be made by the General Assembly, and then they empower the Peace and Security Council to intervene militarily and restore peace in Sudan. And or alternatively, the member states, because under Article 4, Clause J, it also indicates that one of the member states can also call for an intervention and ensure that there's an intervention to restore peace in Sudan. So clearly, I've called and continue to call for a military intervention in Sudan by the African Union to restore peace in Sudan, because these commanders, in the eyes of the Sudanese people, are not legitimate, you know. And if they're not legitimate, they clearly don't care about the life and livelihood of the Sudanese people. If that is the case, then there should be an intervention to restore peace in Sudan and return the country to a civilian rule. So but remains to be seen what will be done by the African Union, because just talking is different thing, but acting is also different. And at this point, I think the African Union should look at whether should look at how to translate the resolutions into action. There should be a resolution calling for intervention, in my opinion, because action is very important in this at this stage. Yeah, I think that's what the African Union should consider. They should consider invoking Article 4, Clause H, together with Article 6 of the protocol. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We are actually running out of time. Our program's supposed to be for 1 hour, and this is 4 minutes past the time. But there is this final question. In your own assessment as an expert, as a lawyer, as somebody who's interested in international and comparative law, how best do you think the problem or the ongoing conflicts in Sudan can be solved?
It is difficult, like I said earlier on. Solving the problem and the conflict in Sudan is difficult, but it is not impossible. The hope is that it is not impossible to stop any conflict. You know, but the most important thing is how to approach the situation in order to ensure that peace comes to Sudan. Like I said, there's a need to look at the countries that are backing these generals. There's a need for more international intervention. There should be more attention being given to Sudan by international community, and there should also be more attention given to the Sudan by the African Union, and that attention should have should be a sort of more action oriented, in the sense that there should be they, they should the African Union should not only consider just talking but acting in that regard. And if that is done, if there is an intervention from the African Union, for example, by invoking Article 4 Clause H and of the Constitutive Act and Article 6 of the African Union Protocol, then there could be peace achieved in Sudan, a sustainable peace. So that is what I think. What I think is that there are mechanisms, the legal basis for intervention, and the legal basis, and this legal basis could clearly lead to sustainable peace being achieved in Sudan. So that's what I really think. More attention from international community and more attention from the African Union and the African Union member states.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Justin, for the engagement for the past 1 hour. From our fans and audience, we have very many questions, but I'll just take quick one, like three of them, and then we'll wrap up the show. The first one is actually not a question, it's a request. It says, thank you so much, Mr. Justin. You are referring and you've made reference to your article like 3 times. Please, can you share a copy of this article with us so that we can also read and digest? So, Mr. Justin, this is just a request from a fan who has been following the presentation. So, you can share it with uh, uh, Mr. Deke, and then Mr. Deke will reach out to those who have joined online so that we can also read and digest it and share our own opinion. We encourage at Fridaus Initiative for Academic Excellence, we promote some such scholarly, write-up. We can also publish it on our website so that people can actually understand what is happening and how scholars are thinking of ways in which some of these conflicts can actually be fixed. All right, I think that one is fixed. The second one is please ask the guest speaker what is his opinion about African politicians not doing their job and allowing military takeover Guinea-Bissau in my mind. They are asking us to secure Your opinion, what do you think about, civilian leaders not doing their job and then providing justification for, military leaders to take over? You have that in Mali, you have that, and now Guinea-Bissau. So the questioner is saying the Guinea-Bissau in his mind or on our mind. So your take, sir.
Yeah, I thank you for that question. I, I I I think it is not the civilian politicians that have the power. The power is with the civilians. You know, if civilians think that civilian leaders are not doing their job, they can always vote them out. and uh, and and if there's a coup, coup is unconstitutional. Is most of the constitutions in Africa do not allow and constitutional mean of taking power from those who were constitutionally elected. It is unconstitutional. It's not allowed. It's also not allowed by the African Union. That means that also the power is with the people. If there's a coup, coup d'etat, the civilians, the civil population can also rise up and protect their constitution, because the constitution says that the only way you can get into power is through the people. You have to be elected. so and if you don't want to go through that route and just take power from someone that has been elected, then you should face consequences from the civil population, those who elected that person into that power. And if the person that has been elected into leadership is not doing his job, there's always a time for him to be voted out. So the idea always is for us to circle back to protecting our constitution, what our individual states constitutions stipulate, and that is always the way forward. It is the reason why each individual state has a constitution that guides how the country should be ruled. And clearly, if you look at all those constitutions, the powers with the people that vote. You have the power over the civilian leaders that are not doing their job, and you also have the power over military leaders that are taking power by force as civilians. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Okay, due
The
to
question,
time, let's
yeah.
take this last
Mm.
one and then we wrap up the show. This one is a bit lengthy. It said, please, my regards to your speaker. He has been speaking my mind from the beginning, and he has been very blunt with what African leaders should and should not do. Now, my question is, I normally think that God did not program Africa as a continent for suffering because He has given us abundant natural resources, He has given us human resources, people who are very intelligent. However, most problems are in Africa. Why? 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 Those are three whys. Why?
uh, yeah, like I totally agree with that person. We are a rich country, rich in terms of resources, but again very poor. So we are rich and poor. We are rich in terms of the fact that we have resources, but we are poor if if you look at our situation. If you look at our network and everything, we are clearly very, very, very poor, and there are a lot of factors, some which are not legal, and some which are clearly legal, and uh, and one of those factors is corruption, and and that goes back again to the first question. You could tie that to the first, the first question, where that individual was saying that what can you do to civilian leaders that are not doing their job, and this where the power of the people should be more pronounced, in the sense that if you have active population, active civil or civil society organizations, because in other countries, mostly if you look at the Western countries, we have four arms of government where you have the executive, you have the judiciary, you have the parliament, and then you have the civil society organization as a wing that plays an oversight role, in the sense that if government does nothing, they will be there on the neck of the government. And the parliament is doing its job, and so on. So it is very important that we have
Mr. Justin, are you there? Mr. Justin, are you there? Okay, as we await Mr. Justin to join us back, we've heard from him. He's an expert in international and comparative law. He's a lecturer and head of the department at the University of Juba. He has been talking for the past 1 hour. He has been talking for the past 1 hour, discussing conflict in Africa with specific reference to Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa has been blessed with so many resources, natural resources, human resources, and you know, each time they talk about conflicts, you'll find it in Africa. What's actually the problem is because we have leadership crisis. We have people who are not um, trained to become leaders in terms of making sacrifice and ensuring that they build a better future for us and for generations to come. And that is why a lot of youth needs to be interested in the leadership of their country, pick interest in who becomes the leader, try as much as possible to avoid money politics because most Africans are actually suffering, notwithstanding our natural and human resources. And so it's now the time for us to come together, ensure that we have the kind of leaders we need in Africa, those who can protect our interests, those who can use our resources for the betterment of the generation now and the generations to come. Before we wrap up the show, I also want to bring to your attention that our seventh edition of African Youth Summit is coming up. The Fridaus Initiative for Academic Excellence International Humanitarian Mood Competition is the problem will soon be released under the leadership of Assistant Director of Programs, Mr. Ahmed Swalo Wengo. This next year, 2026, we're going to be partnering with University of Lusaka, and so we're going to Zambia. We invite universities across Africa to register, and particularly our guest speaker, we're inviting your university, University of Juba, to be part of these developments. Similarly, we also extend our invitation to Mr. Justin personally to be part of the speakers at the African Youth Summit in Lusaka come June 2026. Mr. Justin, thank you so much on behalf of Readers Initiative for Academic Excellence. We thank you for your time, for your research, for your contribution, for your priority in ensuring that this continent is improved, the conflict in Sudan is brought to an end, and some of the papers, because scholars, they speak through their research and their publications. So we hope that very soon the conflict, not only in Sudan, other African countries that are battling with series of conflicts will come to an end. We need a safe Africa. We need to protect our civilians, especially our children, women, and girls. They need our protection. So let's do everything we can as people to ensure that we have a better continent. And so, on behalf of Readers Initiative for Academic Excellence, okay, Mr. Justin, thank you so much. I'm just about to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time. I know you had internet issues. Those are some of the challenges we are facing in Africa in 2025. But we thank you so much for your time. We thank you so much for your research. We thank you so much for your opinion and for the publication you've made. That's how scholars do. You speak through your publication. You allow let people read your thoughts and what you think about an ongoing, situation. And so a lot of people will read it and then they will benefit from it. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I also said in your absence that our seventh edition of African Youth Peace Summit as an organization is coming up by June. The call to paper is already out. We're going to share that with you. We expect and we hope that we are going to submit a paper for publication. It's we partner with Lusaka, University of Lusaka in Zambia, and it's going to be June 2026. Similarly, our international humanitarian mood competition that is given to all undergraduate university students in Africa is also on now. Please allow your student from the University of Juba to register for this competition. Hopefully, if they pass through the preliminary rounds will be online, and then the physical round will be at the University of Juba in June 2026. The last one, 2025, we had it in Kampala, Uganda. We had more than 34 universities across Africa that competed, and the semi-final was in collaboration with the Cavendish University in Uganda. We had the quarterfinal at their university, the semi-final at the International Crimes Division of the High Court, and then the final at the Supreme Court of Uganda. And so we have similar plan. So it's an opportunity for African students to come together to brainstorm, and we're trying to groom, international scholars who will, the way you're doing right on international law and international humanitarian law, we want to build contemporary African scholars to assist us in doing that. And that's what our organizations do. So once again, thank you so much on behalf of Reader's Initiative for Academic Excellence. We thank you. We thank the board of directors. We thank the coordinator of this program, Deke Joy Mary, who I'm filling in for. My name is Abdul Karim Aziz, and I'm the director for Reader's Initiative for Academic Excellence. Next month will be our wrap up for the year. So please stay tuned, and we love you all. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.